Hello there, Mr. Automation again, and this time with a video on Azure and Bicep and how to access a resource from a different resource group. So in this specific example today, I have a development resource group here on the left there. I have an acceptance resource group here on the right. Currently, this development resource group has a key vault and a blob storage account in it. And the acceptance environment basically currently has nothing, right? So what we're going to do in this demo is deploy a Bicep template on this resource group, on the acceptance resource group, this one. But during deployment, we will use values based on that. I got a specific question from someone if you could access a resource from a different resource group from a Bicep template or Bicep file, and yes you can, and it's quite simple as well. There are some complicated scenarios as well, but just for the simple thing for accessing stuff and perhaps reusing values, you know, that you have like a sort of standard value across your environment, that's very possible. So let's go to the code, and I've created an example. So I will explain it in a second. So these are two parameters are just specific for my environment. This is my tenant ID, and object ID, this is my username inside of Azure, right? Or at least an object with that value. And I need to use that to assign permissions to a key vault. Makes sense in a second, but if you create a key vault, you have seen that in the previous demo, you also need to specify an object ID for the access policies, because someone needs to have access, right, somewhere. So that's you need to provide that. So on line 4, what we do is get a resource from an existing type, right? And here you specify the name of that specific storage account. You know, we're trying to access a type of storage account here. So if I go to I have it here, the dev, then you see that I have here a storage account named like that. But when I run this specific deployment, I am targeting a different resource group. So when I start this script, then basically I will not execute it on the same resource group, but on a different one, right? So, and with this syntax, you specify for, okay, this deployment does run on, you know, I will specify acceptance for this parameter in a second, but it will run on acceptance. And then you need to specify here that the key vault that you're referring to, the existing one, sits inside of a different resource group. And you do that by setting the scope here, and then the resource group, and then the name of the resource group. There's also another supported scenario that is this. And then you add here the subscription ID, right? So probably this tenant ID or something like that. So if you have a resource group even in a different subscription, then you also can specify the subscription here up front. I don't need to do that because both resource groups live in the same Azure subscription, so I'm fine here. So and on line 9, we do the same for an existing key vault. We get an existing key vault from the development resource group again. This is the name of that specific key vault. I already shown you we have that here, we have that key vault. And we're going to do something with that as well, of course, because otherwise the demo doesn't make much sense. On line 14, we get the secret. And then on line 19, we actually create the key vault, but inside of the resource group that we specified during runtime, and it will be acceptance this time, could be any, of course. And we specify the name for that new key vault. And the interesting part is, for instance, the SKU, right? And the family and the name. Previously, we had it sort of hard-coded here, right? But now I want this key vault to be based on the key vault from the other resource group. How do you do that? Key vault.properties.sku.family. And how do I get that? Because we have that key vault here, right? We get that existing key vault. And then basically we can loop through the properties. And how did I know this? It's quite simple. Key vault dot properties dot something like SKU something, yeah, SKU dot family, right? I didn't know it either. I was just typing, and it is also self-explaining. And I did the same for the SKU name. So now basically every key vault that I deploy is then based on that key vault that I have in the development environment, right? Let me get the diagram. On this one, right? This key vault. So this has now type A, and it's a premium or a standard, doesn't matter. But I have some properties there, right? And what I do here is I create a new key vault in a second, and it will be based on these values there. So I will mimic that. And of course, I don't say it's a very sensible example that I'm writing here, but the functional question was, can you access a resource from another resource group in a Bicep template if you're deploying something on the target resource group, so to speak? So yes, you can, and this is how you do it. And there's one more interesting thing what I just did for fun. So in the end, we output some information. So for instance, the blob endpoint, that will be based on the storage account that lives in a different resource group, so not the acceptance. And we do the same for the key vault name. A URI from some secret from the key vault from development. We're going to write that to the screen. And we're going to write also the output, I mean the key vault one name, right? The key vault we just created here. In acceptance, we will write the name of that to the output. So, enough talking. What we can do then is a simple PowerShell script, accepts one parameter, resource group. It calls this resource existing Bicep we just examined here. And as some input, we need to specify on which resource group we want to apply this specific template. And that will be this environment, the acceptance environment. That's it. And let's see what we get. And I never cheat, of course. Let's be clear on that. So I go to acceptance here. I will refresh. As you can see, I have nothing there. No key vault, nothing. I will refresh my browser. There's nothing there currently. So now I'm going to run this very simple PowerShell script. We supply some input for the resource group, ACC. I run that. And let's see if we get an error. I don't know, and it shouldn't take that long, so I don't think I even need to pause the video for this. I think it's not that boring to watch, to wait for like 10 seconds, so it should be fine, I hope. Exactly, there you go. So first examine the output here. So what I said, outputs, as you can see in my Bicep file, I specify the output here, blob endpoint, which value, this value. And this is from my development, right? Because in acceptance, you saw that I don't have a storage account. So I successfully got the value from a different resource group. Okay, for key vault name, exactly the same key vault name. This is the one from development, as you can see. It's not for acceptance. Same for the URI. I got the secret from the key vault in development. And the URI of that, the specific link, is this. See? And then this last one, the key vault one name, that is just the key vault we just created using this example. And that is using values from an object or a resource from a different resource group. And that results in a key vault in our acceptance resource group that has the same, I don't know where you can see that, yeah, here, standard, has the same settings because we copied them over from the development environment. And just an example, of course, but I think this is it. So this is how you access a different resource in a Bicep template. I hope it makes sense. And this is the most important part, this scope part. With that scope, you specify which resource groups it comes from. And if your resource group lives in a different subscription, you can also specify the subscription there. So here then comes some fake ID. I don't know your subscription ID, but it will be some sort of GUID, globally unique identifier. So yeah, and yeah, that's it. Not gonna make it longer than needed. So thanks for watching, and see you again. Bye.